Hello everyone and welcome back to my animal channel. I'm so happy. I've got my own animal channel. This makes me very happy. Anyway, today, if you hear Gary, normally I have to excuse his behaviour because it's on my beauty channel. This is amazing. He's running around behind me. He kind of blends in with my bed, which is slightly disconcerting. He looks like he might want to jump off and explore. We'll keep an eye on that. Today I thought that we would go through some typical bearded dragon behaviours and what they mean. When you're a new bearded dragon owner, it can sometimes be really confusing if you see your bearded dragon gaping, or their beards going black, or their tail whipping, or some of these kind of typical bearded dragon behaviours can be a little bit tricky to decipher, and I thought I would kind of put them all in one video. I've got some notes here with me because I'm professional, and I thought that we would go through. So generally a lot of these things are kind of signs of aggression or stress in general. So the first one is head bobbing. Often you will see your bearded dragon, if they are, maybe they've spotted their reflection, you're kind of carrying them around with you and they see themselves in a mirror. If there is something in their tank that you've left in there that's stressing them out or something, you will often see them head bobbing like this. That was my bearded dragon impression, thank you. Probably looked more like a pigeon. This is generally a sign of aggression and a little bit sort of stress. They tend to do this, as I said, if they feel threatened, if they see their reflections, for example, because they don't quite twig that it's them, they might think it's another dragon. If they see themselves in a mirror, mine's done that. It's nothing particularly to worry about. I always, especially if Gary's doing it in his tank, I will always kind of have a little check in there and just make sure that there's not a roach or a cricket he hasn't caught that's really bugging him, because they can get stressed out if you kind of leave a few things in them in the tank for them to chase around and things. Sometimes they do get a little bit stressed if they kind of don't want to eat the last one or something, and it kind of hops around or whatever and bugs them a little bit. The next thing is gaping. Now sometimes you will see your bearded dragon with their mouth a little bit open. Often this is under their heat light as well. Gaping generally is just a way for them to thermoregulate. This is when they are regulating their body temperature. Often they will be doing this if they are under their heat lamp. It's all very normal. Generally speaking, it's nothing to worry about. It's just a way of them he's like trying to lick my bed. Generally, it's just a way of them regulating their own body temperature, and it is nothing to worry about. Colour change. Now, Gary, as you can see, is very pale. Maybe some pictures on my Instagram and things, you have seen him looking a little bit less pale. When they've been under the light and he's a good temperature, and he's been in his tank and his sort of body temperature is optimum, he will be his natural colour, which is this kind of pale grey, almost like a creamy white colour. Now, something that bearded dragons do, along with a lot of other animals, is that they are able to change colour. Again, it is to do with them keeping their body temperature at an optimum level. You will notice maybe throughout the filming of this video, if I hold him up again towards the end, his colour probably will be significantly darker. This is because he's away from his heat lamp. The darker colour you have, the more this attracts the heat, and this is something that bearded dragons do. The next thing I'm going to talk about is hissing. This is fairly self-explanatory, just like a cat hisses at you if they're unhappy or stressed or they don't want you anywhere near them. This is your bearded dragon saying, get lost, mate. Don't want you near me, not very happy, leave me alone. Don't bug them if they're hissing at you, leave them alone. Whatever. The next thing they will often do is tail whip. Monitors, lots of other lizards do this as well. These guys are not ones that can lose their tail. But if they are feeling like they want you to get off them, for example, if you were to, I don't really want to do this to Gary, but if you were to kind of pick him up and not support his body properly, he may well tail whip. That is him saying, put me down please, leave me alone, or I want you to get away from me. I find that this has only ever happened to me, as he's not an aggressive bearded dragon at all, if I just have picked him up or mishandled him. If I have not managed to kind of get a full support of my hand, you can see I've got kind of the girth of him. I will be doing a separate video on handling later, but it's really important to support your dragon when you pick them up. I always try and get like the bulk of their weight, sort of pick them up from under the chest and under the kind of abdomen area, so that kind of prevents that panic tail whipping where he's like, get off me, I feel like I'm gonna fall off. Biting. Again, this is fairly self-explanatory. If your bearded dragon is biting you, that is a sign of aggression. As I said, I will be doing another video later on where I kind of talk you through how to tame an aggressive bearded dragon. This is not something I have had to deal with, but it's something where there are quite easy techniques that you can do to really help the situation, as long as you're patient, because this kind of taming does take time, of course. Now, another time your bearded dragon may bite you, and this is not a sign of aggression, is if you are hand feeding. If you choose not to use tongs, I do a combination of both, and I've never been bitten by Gary. I would imagine if they do bite and it's just their kind of feeding response, it's not going to be a particularly awful bite or anything. They are only small, they have got like little sharp teeth, but I don't think it's going to be anything that sends you to the A&E department, for example. But obviously, sometimes when your eager animals are going for their food, especially if you are keen on hand feeding, especially if you're if it's a smaller bearded dragon, you've got smaller things like smaller crickets, smaller dubia roaches and stuff, or like little worms, they may well get your fingers. This is not them being aggressive to you, it's just because your hands or your finger is close to their food source, so I wouldn't worry about that at all. Next thing we're going to talk about is digging. I don't really have much experience with digging myself, as Gary is a male. The main reason for digging is just for them to get comfortable. If you have kind of a looser substrate, or sometimes actually when Gary's going to sleep, he has a little dig around as if he's kind of like snuggling himself in. That's all fairly normal. The other reason for digging is often if you have a female and they are about to lay their eggs. They will want somewhere safe, they will want somewhere dark, and they will want to be kind of digging a hole so that they can lay their eggs. That's all very normal stuff. Waving. Often you will see your bearded dragon do this. Generally speaking, waving is like a little bit of a weird one. We aren't completely sold on why they do this, but there are a couple of kind of reasons that people think they do. Youngsters tend to do this more often, especially when they're really tiny. Imagine like a big fleshy thing coming up to your tank. This kind of slower wave is often seen as a sign that they realise that you're the dominant one. It's kind of a show of like, oh, I'm only little, don't hurt me. Generally speaking, other bearded dragons, you might see them do it to each other as well. And it is thought that in the wild they kind of do this to acknowledge the other one's presence. It's like, hey, I've seen you, don't really want to fight, I'm aware that you're here, like, we're all cool, mate. Like a little wave it's just kind of, it's like politeness, you know, that kind of thing. When they're babies as well, Gary has done it once, I think, and it was when I kind of first got him. He was used to me kind of approaching the tank and stuff like that. Babies, as far as I'm aware, seem to grow out of it. Like, the bigger they get, the more secure they are within themselves, and the more secure they are around you as well. As I said, Gary did it maybe a couple of times when I first had him in the first few weeks, and he hasn't done it since, so it's not an issue. Glass surfing. This is something that Gary does frequently, and it's something that you as a bearded dragon owner will have to deal with frequently, I would assume. Something that they do all the time, in my experience, running up and down, trying to scrabble at the glass to be let out. In my experience, this is nothing particularly to worry about. Bearded dragons are fairly social. They are kind of known as lap lizards. They're very chill, most of them, obviously. Their temperament is really quite good, and they do kind of enjoy having a little run around. Enrichment for your animal is a big important part of owning one. I feel like it is very kind of irresponsible to just keep them cooped up in a tank all the time, not give them any attention, and not let them have a little run around, obviously supervised in a safe zone where there is limited risk of injury to your pet. However, Gary glass surfs for two reasons. He glass surfs because he wants out, and that's when I know like he needs to have a little run around on the bed, or I might take him downstairs and he'll watch TV with me and he'll run up and down the sofa and have a little chill out and do some exploring and stuff. And this is just kind of like bit of excitement for him because he might get bored in his tank and whatnot. Or the other reason I have found is if there is something in there that's stressing them out. Now, when you leave kind of smaller bugs and stuff in there, you really do need to make sure that maybe they aren't being left in there and hidden in like a nook or cranny to kind of breed or do that. I had a situation a few months ago, and I'm still finding very tiny roaches in there now. While I was feeding solely dubia roaches, I did have my own dubia roach farm. I have since kind of stopped encouraging that, and he is back on locusts, which are his favourite. But there are still a few dubia roach babies that I see that have kind of stuck and probably bred behind like a little nook in the tank. And I find that sometimes when he's glass surfing, he's doing a little bit of blackbearding as well, because there's obviously other kind of living things in there with them. I would say try not to leave so many things that you can't keep an eye of or that aren't able to hide in your enclosure in there for too long. As I said, they can breed and that can cause a little bit of stress to your dragon. I would just be a little bit mindful of leaving too many crickets, locusts or anything you can catch easily and put back in a box in there for too long as well with them also. I find that the glass surfing is either he wants to be let out because he wants a little explore, or there's something in there that's bothering him and making him feel stressed. The last thing that these guys do that they are really well known for, and I will kind of show you the area this will happen in, but you won't be able to see it on Gary because he's in a really good mood, is blackbearding. Bearded dragons have this beard all kind of down here, and they have these little kind of bits too. And when they are angry, they are showing a display of dominance, they are stressed, they are telling you to back away, they don't want anything to do with you. Sometimes when he's hunting as well, they will get this full black beard where the beard would be, and it will completely puff up and go black. This generally is a sign of dominance or aggression, but as I said, sometimes when he's very exciting and he's hunting things, then he will blackbeard as well. When I first started giving him baths as well, he blackbearded at me. He never hissed or tried to bite or, you know, scrabble away or anything, but he wasn't a massive fan of baths to start with, so there was a little bit of blackbearding just to let me know, like, I'm not happy you're doing this to me, but fine, whatever. Generally speaking, blackbearding is a sign of sort of stress, dominance, or just general dislike for whatever you're doing at that time or whatever's going on. It's nothing particularly to worry about. Maybe just check the tank and stuff if it's kind of unwarranted. You know, if they're in there blackbearding and doing a bit head bobbing, then I would just kind of, as I said before, check the tank for anything that's left in there that may be stressing them out. I hope that you've enjoyed this video and it's been quite helpful for you, especially if you are a new bearded dragon owner. If there's anything else your bearded dragon does that I haven't got on this list, then please do comment down below and I'll try and answer some of your questions. If you too are a beardy owner and you have anything to add to what I've explained, then again, please do let us know in the comments down below. I hope that you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please do give it a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button if you're not part of the Jane's family, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye from me and Gaz.